We are accustomed to viewing the lives of ancient people through the prism of popular myths about savagery and struggle. It seems that their relationships were reduced to the simplest instincts, devoid of complex social rules. However, scientific discoveries in recent years paint a completely different, much more mysterious picture. In a world where survival depended on group unity, relationships between people were no less important than the ability to obtain food. These relationships were built on complex foundations that we are only beginning to decipher with the help of genetics and archaeology. Forget the stereotypes. Reality was much more complex and interesting. Watch the video to the end to find out what genetic traces these ancient unions left in us, and why the modern concept of love may have been completely foreign to them. The history of humanity is written not only on cave walls, but also in our own DNA. Modern genetic research has revealed a striking fact. The genomes of many of us contain fragments inherited from unknown populations. Scientists call them ghost populations of ancient humans. We have not found their remains, we do not know what they look like or where exactly they lived. Their existence is confirmed only by mathematical models analyzing the genomes of modern humans. These mysterious ancestors left their mark by forming alliances with our direct ancestors. These contacts took place tens of thousands of years ago, creating a complex mosaic of human origins. We are carriers of the genetic memory of those whom archaeologists have never seen. This raises fundamental questions about our past. What were these unions between Homo sapiens and ghost populations? Were they rare, random encounters across the vast expanses of the ancient world? Or were they systematic contacts based on exchange and cooperation? These genetic ghosts remind us that human evolution was not a linear process. It was a complex intertwining of different groups, each of which contributed to who we are today. The history of our species is much more diverse than we could have imagined. Each such encounter was not just a transfer of genes, but an interaction between two different worlds. Perhaps they exchanged not only partners, but also technologies, knowledge, and cultural traditions. We can only guess at the nature of these ancient contacts. These discoveries force us to rethink the very concept of humanity. The boundaries between different groups of ancient people were permeable. Our past is a history not of isolation, but of constant interaction. Perhaps it was this ability to establish connections with dissimilar groups that became one of the keys to the success of our species. The flexibility of social structures allowed us to adapt to changing conditions. Understanding these ancient connections helps us to better understand ourselves. The study of ghost populations is at the forefront of modern paleogenetics. Each new study adds new details to this mysterious picture. We are on the verge of great discoveries about our deepest past. Do you think these alliances were the result of conflict or cooperation? I would be very interested to hear your point of view, so please write about it in the comments. One of the most well-known facts about our past is the genetic legacy of Neanderthals. Most modern humans outside of Africa have between 1% and 4% Neanderthal DNA. This fact irrefutably proves that our ancestors formed alliances with members of this species. These events were not isolated or accidental. Genetic analysis shows that interbreeding occurred at different times and in different regions of Eurasia. This suggests a long period of coexistence and interaction between two intelligent species. The nature of these unions remains a subject of scientific debate. We do not know whether these were voluntary exchanges of partners between friendly groups. Perhaps there were other forms of social interaction that we can only guess at. The very fact of successful interbreeding and the birth of viable offspring speaks volumes. Biologically, Homo sapiens and Neanderthals were quite similar. Their worlds intersected for tens of thousands of years. These unions left an important mark on our biology. Some genes inherited from Neanderthals are related to the functioning of the immune system. They helped our ancestors adapt to new diseases when they left Africa. Other Neanderthal genes affect skin and hair color, as well as the body's response to ultraviolet radiation. This legacy has become part of our adaptive mechanism to life in northern latitudes. Each of these traits is an echo of an ancient encounter. Studying these interactions helps us understand why Neanderthals eventually disappeared. Perhaps they were not displaced, but partially assimilated, dissolving into the more numerous Homo sapiens population. Their genetic legacy lives on in us. We can only guess what communication between these two groups looked like. Given that Neanderthals had their own language and culture, their contacts with our ancestors could have been very complex. It was an encounter between two different Stone Age civilizations. Each such encounter was a unique event that changed the genetic landscape of the future of humanity. We are living evidence of these ancient interactions. Our DNA is a map that marks the paths and encounters of our ancestors. But if alliances with Neanderthals were a reality, what did the social groups of Homo sapiens themselves look like? And why was their structure the key to survival? In the next chapter, we will examine the mystery of the primitive collective. When we talk about the survival of ancient humans, we often imagine young hunters. However, one influential scientific theory shifts the focus to another, unexpected figure. This theory is known as the grandmother hypothesis. The essence of the hypothesis is simple. Older women played a key role in the evolutionary success of Homo sapiens. Unlike many other primates, human females live long after their reproductive period ends. This fact has long remained an evolutionary mystery. According to the grandmother hypothesis, this feature gave our species a huge advantage. Older women, not having small children of their own, could help their daughters care for their grandchildren. This freed up time and resources for young mothers. Such assistance allowed women to give birth more often, reducing the interval between births. In conditions of high mortality, this was critical for population growth. A group with active grandmothers had a better chance of survival and prosperity. In addition, older women were the keepers of invaluable knowledge. They knew where to find edible roots, which plants had medicinal properties, and how to preserve food. This knowledge was passed down from generation to generation, ensuring the stability of the group. This hypothesis changes our understanding of the structure of ancient society. It shows that an individual's value was not determined solely by their reproductive abilities. The experience and wisdom of the older generation were no less important. Thus, kinship ties extended beyond the couple and their immediate offspring. The entire group was connected by a complex network of mutual assistance, where everyone played their part. Collective survival was more important than individual success. The grandmother hypothesis also explains why humans develop such complex social skills. Constant interaction between different generations contributed to the development of language, empathy, and the ability to cooperate. We are a species created by cooperation. Archaeological data indirectly supports this theory. Analysis of ancient human remains shows that many of them lived to an advanced age. These people probably contributed actively to the life of their group until the very end. This elegant theory shows how one biological feature could have triggered a chain reaction of social and cultural changes. It paints a picture of an ancient society based on care and knowledge transfer. This is very different from the stereotypical image of a savage past. Life in the Paleolithic era was lived in small, mobile groups. Anthropologists estimate that a typical group of hunter-gatherers consisted of 25 to 50 people. This was the optimal size for hunting together and making efficient use of resources in a given area. However, life in such a small and close-knit community created a serious biological problem. Constant alliances within the group would inevitably lead to close-kin mating. This increased the risk of genetic diseases and weakened the population as a whole. Ancient humans had to find a way to avoid this danger. The solution was exogamy, the practice of seeking partners outside one's own group. This means that our ancestors did not live in complete isolation. They were part of much larger social networks that united many such small groups. These networks could cover vast territories. It was within these networks that information, resources, and most importantly, partners were exchanged. This completely destroys the image of isolated cave people. Instead, we see a complex social universe consisting of many interconnected cells. Maintaining such connections required regular contact, travel, and possibly special rituals. We can imagine seasonal gatherings when several groups came together in places rich in resources. At such meetings, alliances could be formed, news exchanged, and new couples formed. This was a vital social dynamic. This system ensured genetic diversity and population stability. It also contributed to the spread of cultural innovations. A new technology or idea that emerged in one group could quickly spread throughout the network. The existence of such networks is confirmed by archaeological finds. For example, tools made from rare stone mined in one place are found hundreds of kilometers from the source. This is direct evidence of contact and exchange between distant groups. This model of social organization was incredibly successful. It allowed people to explore new territories and adapt to different climatic conditions. The network was their main insurance against local disasters or resource shortages. But how did these scattered groups maintain contact across vast territories? In the next chapter, we will learn what evidence of such contacts archaeologists have found. How could ancient people convey information about themselves over long distances? One answer to this question may be personal jewelry, shell beads, tooth pendants, engraved bone plates. These were not just decorations. Archaeologists find such artifacts all over the world, and many of them are strikingly standardized within a single region. This suggests that jewelry served as a kind of sign system. It was an ancient language understood by members of a single cultural network. With the help of jewelry, a person could convey important information about themselves. For example, a certain type of bead could indicate membership in a particular clan or group. It was a kind of Stone Age passport. Such a system was critical for maintaining exogamous relationships. When encountering an unfamiliar group, a person could determine who they were by their jewelry. Were these people their own, part of the same cultural network, or strangers? It also helped regulate marital relationships. Jewelry could signal social status, age, or whether a person was free to enter into a union. This helped to avoid conflicts and misunderstandings. The exchange of such items was probably an important part of social rituals. A gift in the form of a necklace could strengthen the union between groups or be part of a marriage ceremony. These items had not only aesthetic, but also enormous social value. It is striking that some types of shells used to make beads are found thousands of kilometers from the nearest coast. This indicates the existence of extensive exchange networks. Objects were passed from hand to hand, linking distant regions together. The style of jewelry could change over time, reflecting changes in social structures. The emergence of new forms or materials could signal the formation of new alliances or the collapse of old ones. For archaeologists, it's like reading an ancient chronicle. In this way, these small objects tell us a big story. They bear witness to the complex social life of our ancestors. They show that relationships between people and groups were governed by clear rules and symbols. It is through such seemingly insignificant details that we can glimpse the world of ancient people. A world that was filled not only with the struggle for survival, but also with a complex system of social codes. It was a society based on symbols and trust. One of the most difficult and controversial questions is the form of marital relations among ancient people. Were they monogamous, like many modern societies? Or did they practice polygamy, where one man had several partners? We have no direct evidence, so scientists use indirect data. One approach is to study sexual dimorphism, i.e., the difference in size between males and females. In species where males are significantly larger than females, polygyny and high competition for partners are usually observed. In modern humans, men are on average only slightly larger than women. This may indicate a tendency toward monogamous or serial monogamous relationships in our evolutionary past. However, the picture is not so clear-cut. For example, in our distant ancestors, the Australopithecines, the difference in size was much more pronounced. This may indicate that their social structure was closer to that of gorillas, with a dominant male. But over time, this difference decreased. This change may have been related to a change in social strategies. Perhaps cooperation and the formation of strong pair bonds became a more advantageous survival strategy than constant competition. Caring for offspring required the efforts of both parents. However, anthropological data show a huge variety of marriage systems in modern hunter-gatherer societies. Among them are monogamy, polygamy, and even polyandry. This suggests that our ancestors were probably very flexible in their social structures. Perhaps there was no single, universal model. The form of unions may have depended on specific conditions: population density, resource availability, cultural traditions. People adapted their social rules to their environment. Some researchers suggest the existence of primitive communism in relationships where children were raised by the whole group without a clear distinction of paternity. However, this hypothesis has little factual support. Most likely, kinship ties were clearly defined. Genetic research also does not provide a clear answer. It can show the degree of kinship within ancient groups, but it cannot tell us about the social norms that governed relationships. This is a mystery hidden behind the veil of time. But if the structure of the family remains a mystery, what do we know about the rituals that may have accompanied the formation of unions? In the next chapter, we will delve into the world of symbols and ancient art. The caves of Europe are decorated with amazing works of art from the Ice Age. We are used to seeing images of animals and hunting scenes in them. However, among these drawings, there are other, more mysterious symbols. Many researchers believe that some of the cave paintings are related to themes of fertility and procreation. Geometric symbols, which are often found next to images of animals, may be symbolic representations of the male and female principles. This interpretation is controversial, but it offers a new perspective on the thinking of ancient artists. The so-called Venuses occupy a special place in Paleolithic art. These are small statuettes of women with exaggeratedly large forms. They are found across a vast territory from Siberia to France. The purpose of these figurines is one of the great mysteries of archaeology. Were they representations of the mother goddess, symbols of fertility, or ideals of female beauty at that time? Perhaps they were used in rituals associated with the birth of new life. The absence of facial features in most of the Venuses suggests that they were not portraits of specific women. Rather, they were generalized, symbolic images. Images associated with the idea of motherhood and the continuation of the family line, which was central to the survival of the group. Some scholars suggest that these figurines may have been a kind of amulet. Women may have carried them with them to ensure a successful birth. In a world without medicine, such rituals had enormous psychological significance. Art was not just decoration, but an important part of the worldview of ancient people. Through symbols and images, they tried to understand and influence the world around them. The fertility of nature and the fertility of humans were inextricably linked in their minds. Perhaps the creation of such images was part of initiation rites or marriage ceremonies. Young people could undergo rituals in painted caves, learning the basics of the world order and the social rules of their group. The cave was their temple. These works of art show that gender relations and the idea of procreation were understood on a deep symbolic level. These were not just biological instincts. It was a realm filled with rituals, myths, and sacred meanings. Even if we can never fully decipher these ancient messages, they clearly tell us one thing. Life, death, and birth were central themes that preoccupied our ancestors, and they expressed these ideas through timeless images in art. For a long time, the picture of the past seemed relatively simple. Homo sapiens, who came from Africa, encountered Neanderthals in Eurasia. However, the discovery made in Denisova Cave in Altai completely changed this scenario. A third player in the evolutionary arena was discovered. In 2010, geneticists extracted DNA from a tiny bone fragment found in the cave. Analysis showed that it did not belong to either Neanderthals or modern humans. It was a completely new, previously unknown group of ancient humans named the Denisovans. To date, we know very little about them, as archaeological finds are extremely scarce. Virtually all information about the Denisovans comes from their genome. This is a unique case in paleoanthropology, where a species is known primarily by its DNA rather than its bones. Genetics has told us the most important thing. Our ancestors formed alliances with the Denisovans. Their trace is especially noticeable in the genome of modern inhabitants of Melanesia, Papua New Guinea, and Australia. Up to 6% of their DNA was inherited from the Denisovans. This means that the Denisovans' habitat was huge, stretching from Siberia to Southeast Asia. Our ancestors moving through this region repeatedly encountered and interbred with them. The world of the Ice Age was much more populated by different species of humans than we thought. These contacts were not accidental and left an important legacy. For example, the gene that helps modern Tibetans survive in high-altitude conditions was inherited from the Denisovans. This is a striking example of how ancient alliances gave our ancestors adaptive advantages. The existence of Denisovans complicates the picture of human relationships in the past. It was not a simple story of two species. It was a complex world where at least 3 different human populations interacted, competed, and mixed with each other. We do not know what Denisovans looked like or what their culture was like, but we know for sure that they were part of our shared history. Their genes live on in millions of modern humans. Every new discovery in Denisova Cave can bring new insights. This cave is a unique window into the past, where Neanderthals, Denisovans, and modern humans succeeded one another over hundreds of thousands of years. Perhaps they even lived there at the same time. The history of the Denisovans is a reminder of how much we still don't know about our past. It shows that the keys to entirely new chapters in human history may be buried underground. We are still at the very beginning of this journey. Ancient alliances between different groups of people were not just social events. They had profound biological consequences that are still felt today. Our DNA is a living archive that stores the memory of these encounters. As already mentioned, genes inherited from Neanderthals and Denisovans helped our ancestors adapt to the new conditions in Eurasia. This is especially true for immune system genes. They gave Homo sapiens ready-made solutions for fighting local pathogens. It was a kind of evolutionary shortcut. Instead of spending millennia developing their own immunity, our ancestors received it as a gift from those who lived in Eurasia long before them. In a world full of dangers, this was a huge advantage. In addition to immunity, we also inherited other useful traits. Some variants of genes associated with fat metabolism also have archaic origins. They may have helped us better adapt to cold climates and diets rich in animal foods. However, not all inherited genes were beneficial. Some of them, which helped us survive in the past, are associated with an increased risk of certain diseases in modern conditions. For example, some Neanderthal alleles are associated with type 2 diabetes and Crohn's disease. This shows that evolution has no ultimate goal. A trait that is beneficial in one environment may become neutral or even harmful in another. We live with a genetic heritage that was formed in a completely different world. Interestingly, there are sections of the modern human genome that have been completely cleansed of Neanderthal and Denisovan variants. These are mainly genes associated with brain development and speech. It is likely that the Homo sapiens gene variants in these areas provided such a significant advantage that natural selection quickly eliminated all archaic alternatives. Studying this genetic heritage allows us to reconstruct the history of our species' migrations and adaptations. Each population carries a unique set of archaic genes that reflects its unique path. It is a map of our past written in the language of genetics. Thus, ancient alliances have not sunk into oblivion. They continue to influence our health, appearance, and ability to adapt to the environment. We are the result of a complex history of mixing and interaction. Understanding this heritage has important practical implications for modern medicine. It helps us better understand the nature of many diseases and develop new approaches to their treatment. Ancient history turns out to be directly linked to our future. Despite all the advances in genetics and archaeology, our knowledge of the personal lives of ancient people remains extremely fragmentary. It is important to honestly acknowledge that there is a huge area where scientific data ends and speculation begins. This is where most myths and hype are born. The most important question we don't have an answer to is, what did these unions mean to the people themselves? We use modern terms such as marriage or family, but we don't know what concepts existed in their minds. The idea of romantic love is most likely a much later cultural invention. We do not know the social rules that govern these relationships. How were partners chosen? Who made the decision? Were there any obligations between partners and their groups? The stereotypical image of a caveman dragging a woman into his cave by force is a product of the 19th century and has nothing to do with reality. Survival in the harsh conditions of the Ice Age required complex cooperation, not constant violence. A society based on brute force would simply be unviable. We also cannot peer into their emotional world. Did they experience affection, jealousy, and grief over the loss of a partner in the same way we do? Most likely, yes. But the forms in which these feelings manifested themselves could have been radically different. Archaeology gives us only indirect clues. Paired burials where people were buried together may indicate strong bonds. But this is only one of many possible interpretations. We must be very careful when projecting our modern ideas about relationships onto the distant past. Their world was different, their culture was different, and their social structures may have been organized according to principles that are difficult for us to even imagine today. Science does not stand still, and each new discovery adds a grain of knowledge to this mosaic. But many questions will probably remain unanswered. This forces us to be more modest in our judgments about the past. Therefore, when we talk about the love of ancient people, we must remember that this is only a metaphor. Reality was primarily about survival, continuing the family line, and maintaining complex social networks. It was a pragmatic system clothed in cultural symbols that we are only beginning to unravel. The main conclusion we can draw is to reject simple answers. The history of human relations was not a linear path from savagery to civilization. It was a complex, diverse, and mysterious evolution full of unknown chapters. Which of the mysteries of ancient human relationships did you find most intriguing? Perhaps it is the mystery of ghost populations, the role of grandmothers in evolution, or the complex language of ancient jewelry. The world of our ancestors is full of secrets, and many of them are yet to be revealed. Suggest topics for future videos in the comments that you would like to see on our channel. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new episodes of Frontiers of Science, where we will continue to explore the most amazing mysteries of the past, present, and future.